Aristotle of Nicomaticus, the stagirite of the city of Miletus. But Paphronius mentioned these matters in the fourth book of his all-encompassing learned histories. 30. And Alexander became learned in every matter and trained himself so well, as I said before, that it became clearly evident he was being taught by some divinity. When he was free from tutorial counseling, from time to time he umpired his fellow students, and when he saw a team being defeated, he joined the battle, and then in turn it was victorious. Thus it was clear that victory was of his doing. 31. And at that time the stablers came and brought to Philip from his stables a huge, powerful horse. And they brought it and stood it before him and dressed him in his fashion. Lord King, we found this creature, who is more beautiful and faster than Pegasus and the Aryan, born in your stables, and we have brought him from Lamanitos, and we offer him to you. He was very surprised at seeing how such great beauty and size, and said, I swear by my salvation that he is beautiful. However, Lord, they said, he is a man-eater. And he observed, it is true that such things have happened among the Hellenes, for he received a nature that was disposed to good and evil. And now, since he has become evil, take him away and shut him in a cell, bridle him, and imprison him, so that we may throw before him anyone who, captured for a crime or murder, falls under the laws of punishment. Once the king had spoken, the action was faster than the words. 32. Meanwhile, Alexander was growing and maturing. When he was 12 years old, he began to work with his father. He armed himself and went forth with the troops, and he liked to ride on horseback. And he saw that Philip was not on good terms with Olympias. Olympias had called Nectanebus to her and said, Find out what Philip is thinking about me. When he had investigated, he came and sat down with her, and Alexander asked, Father, are those heavenly stars which you are now talking about invisible? Surely, son, he replied. Can I too see them? And he said, You may, son. 33. And when it was night, he took the child out of the city and looked up into the sky and showed Alexander the stars. And Alexander seized him and took and threw him down into a pit. And he suffered severe blows on the neck in falling, and he said, Alexander, my child, why did you want to do that? And he replied, Blame yourself, astrologer. And he asked, Why? For he replied, While not knowing the earth, you seek to study the affairs of the heavens? And he said, I am dying, Alexander, for I suffered grievous harm in falling, but nothing a mortal person can conquer fate. And the child asked, Why? And he asked, I know how they had apportioned my life. For it was written that I was to be slain by my son, and I was not able to escape this lot, but have been slain by you. And Alexander asked, Aren't I then your child? And he replied, Indeed. Really? Asked Alexander. That is true, replied Nectanebus. And thus he told him of the flight from Egypt, and the coming to Olympias, and the inquiry into the stars, his desire, and how I went to her as my God, and I mated with her. Saying this, Nectanebus spat forth his spirit. 34. And upon learning that it was his father who had died, Alexander was afraid to leave him in the pit, lest he be eaten by wild beasts. For it was night, and the place was desolate. Moved by compassion and pity for his sire, he lifted him tenderly and bore him nobly on his shoulders within the gates. And coming before his mother, he told her everything that he had heard from the astrologer magician. And Olympias was astonished and amazed, and she reproached herself, for, misled by deceptive and ingenious magic, she had committed adultery. Then she buried him, that very Nectanebus, as befitted the father of her child. She prepared a grave and put him there. It is 35. It is astonishing to consider the destiny of Nectanebus. For the Egyptian came to Macedon and was shrouded and buried in the Greek fashion, while Alexander, who was Macedonian, came to Egypt and had a native burial befitting a god. 36. Meanwhile, after Philip had returned to his land and entered his palace, he sent to Delphi to get an oracle as to who would rule after him. And the oracle of Delphi, after drinking from the Castalian river of the underworld, spoke to him thus. Philip, he who mounts the bull-headed horse and rides through Hellas, shall rule over the whole world and subdue all men with his spear. And that horse was called bull-headed because he had on his thigh an unusual scar which had the shape of a steer. And when the king had heard the oracle, he was ever watching for a new Heracles. 47. And when Alexander reached 14 years ago, he happened to pass the palace where the bull-headed horse was put away in a cell. He heard terrible neighing and turning aside. Philip's son said, "What is that noise? Is it the neighing of a horse or a cry of a lion?" Plodomnos, who was afterwards called the Savior, was following him, and he said, "Lord, this is the bull-headed horse which your father locked up and shut away, for it is a man-eater." When the horse heard Alexander's voice, he neighed a second time. Not a terrible and frightening outcry, but sweet, pleasant, and gentle. It seems to me the bull-headed horse was commanded by God to act thus with Alexander. His whole mien was calm and clear as he started forward, and how gentle was the suppliant manner he showed his master. 48. And when Alexander saw his new mien, and noticed the traces of the many men who had been put to death, he, as a man, felt pity. And he elbowed aside the guards and opened the grated doors of the cage. Trusting in his ancestry, he grabbed the halter of the horse and subdued him by physical strength, rather than by luck. And he mounted him with a bridle. And immediately someone ran off and recounted this to Philip. And he, recalling and remembering what had happened concerning this, went forth to meet his son. And he greeted him, saying, "Hail, Alexander, conqueror of the world." And Philip remained cheerful and happy in the secret and hidden hope for his son. 49. And one day, when Alexander was 15 years old, he found his father at leisure, and then embraced him and said, "Father, I beg you to permit me to go by boat to Pisa." Philip asked, "Do you wish to see the Olympic contest?" The youth replied, "No, father, I want to take part in the contest." He questioned, "And in what sport have you been trained so that you would try to do it? For I know that as son of a king, you know nothing more than to take part in the war horse exercises. You do not know how to fight, nor wrestle, nor any other discipline." Alexander replied, "I wish to drive a chariot, father." He said, "I shall see. Let horses from my stables be prepared for you, and let them be brought immediately to you, and you concern yourself in a praiseworthy fashion with the care of training them." He replied, "Just give me permission to go. I have my own horse, which I have trained from the time he was young, and I have raised him for myself." And he embraced him and was amazed at his eagerness, and he said, "Son, if you so wish, go." 88. And when Alexander had found atop 5 prominent peaks the land where the pillars of the sun of Helion are located, and also the temple of that god, he looked for the shrine of Serapis, in compliance with the oracle given him by Ammon, and he sought the one who is the greatest god of all, for the oracle of the gods had spoken thus: "O king, I, Phogus the ram, say to you that if you wish to remain forever ageless, build a noteworthy city on the island of Proteus, over which Plutonius presides, encompassing the boundless realm with 5 crested peaks." And he invoked the god who sees everything. 89. And there, opposite the shrine of the god, he set up a great altar, which from that time on they called the altar of Alexander. He offered elaborate sacrifices upon it and stood at prayer and said, "Whatever god you are, who have the divine responsibility for this land and watch over the endless earth, accept my sacrifices and be my help in war." And having said this, he placed the sacrifice upon the altar. Suddenly, a great eagle swooped down, seized the entrails of the sacrifice, and flew off into the air. It circled around and released them upon a different altar. The learned examiners pointed out the place to the king, and when he got there, he immediately saw the entrails on top of the altar. It was an altar which had been built a long time ago, and seated with inviolate image, a large statue of a maiden. 90. And he inquired of the inhabitants there as to which god it was. And they said that they did not know, but according to the story of the forefathers, it was said to be the shrine of Amruzad in Anahit. And in it he saw the obelisks which remain to this day in the shrine of Serapis outside the city wall, which at that time was at the shrine of Serapis. And divine dedicatory writings were marked on the shrine, and the city was marvelous. And Alexander asked what the obelisks were. They said they belonged to the world-conquering king Sesonicius. And in letters on the shrine, there is this dedicatory inscription, which is translated for the king as follows: "I, Sesonicius, king of Egypt and conqueror of the world, built and dedicated this to Serapis, the first god revealed to this land." 91. And looking at that god, Alexander said, "Great Serapis, give me a sign that you are the god of this land." And Serapis appeared most clearly to him in his sleep and said, "Alexander, have you forgotten what happened while you stood at prayer making sacrifices? Didn't you say, 'Whoever you are, guardian protector of this land, who watch over the boundless earth, accept my sacrifices and be my help in battle?'" And suddenly an eagle swooped down and put the entrails on the altar. "Was it not evident to you that I am the guardian and protecting God of all?" 92. And in his dream he entreated the god and asked, "Will this city remain true to the name Alexandria in which it was built? Or will my name be changed to that of another king? Advise me." And he saw the god, who took him by the hand and led him to a high mountain and spoke in this fashion: "Alexander, can you move this mountain to another place?" He thought about it and said, "How can I, O Lord?" And the god said to him, "And so too can your name never be changed to that of a king of other peoples, but rather Alexandria shall flourish and overflow with bounty, and it shall help and deliver from evil the cities which existed before it." To this Alexander replied. 93. To this Alexander replied, "Lord, disclose this to me too. How am I destined to die?" And he said, "It is griefless and good and honorable that mortal man not know in advance what the time of the end of his life will be. For men do not understand that this life seems endless and infinitely varied when they are ignorant of all of its evils. And so it should seem good to you to not know your destiny, dear one. But if you ask and wish to learn about your fate, I shall tell you forthwith. With my help, you, a callow young man, shall subdue all the races of barbarian nations. And then, by dying and yet not dying, you shall come to me. Then the city of Alexandria, which you are building in the middle of the land, is to be coveted by the world, a land where God shall dwell for long days in time to come. And it shall be surpassing in good things, since it shall have been adorned with many temples and diverse shrines, and shall abound in beauty, in magnitude, and its enormous crowds of men. And all who set it there shall stay on and forget their former fatherlands. And I shall be its protecting deity for all time to come. And forever fresh and ageless, I shall preside over it and strengthen the land. And the city that has been built shall remain strong forever. It shall cast lights upon the fire and illuminate the infernal regions. And it shall make the south wind quail when it breathes its harmful breath. So chat the terrible doings of the evil spirit shall be of no avail against the city. For earthquake is to grip it but a short while, and likewise plague and famine. So too shall there be war, but it shall not present great danger, rather like a dream. It shall quickly pass through the city, and many kings shall forever revere you as one who has become a god according to the customs of this land. And when you die, you shall be revered as having become a god, and they shall have a great crowd of people on the public square, and all the more because of the temperate weather. And I shall be its protector and defense, so that no hardship shall remain permanently, either earthquake or deadly plague, but shall pass through the city like a dream. And many kings shall come to it, not to make war, but to make reverence to you as one who has been apotheosized and revered. And when you have died, you shall receive gifts from kings forever, for you shall dwell there both when you are dead and when not yet dead. For this city you are building is to be your grave. And I shall quickly prove to you where you were meant to be. Take 200 and add 1, then 101, and 4 times 20 and 10, and take the first number and make it the last, and learn for all time what God I am. And having given the oracle, the god departed from there. 94. And when Alexander awoke and recalled the oracle which 94 had been delivered to him by the gods, he recognized the great Serapis, Lord of all. And he built a great altar and ordered that fitting sacrifices be brought for the gods. And he had them slaughtered and put upon the altar. And he had huge quantities of aromatic gum burnt and piles of varied incenses put upon the altar. And he ordered all men to rejoice. He had Parmenion, the architect, make this copper statue and build the shrine, which brought to mind Homeric verses. As this wondrous bard, Homer said, "And the son of Zrawan made a sign of his azure brows, and his marvelous godly locks moved on the king's immortal head, and Olympus soundly shaken trembled." In this way, Parmenion built a shrine called that of Serapis. Now the preparation for the building of the city was as we have related. 95. And Alexander took his troops and hastened to reach Egypt, and he sent his warships to wait for him in Tripolis.